So what is a craft brewery to me? To me, it is a place, an idea where the people that are running and operating the place and coming up with the recipes and the experiences have that as their primary goal and objective is to create an amazing beer experience, and not necessarily as a commodity or as a source of income, which it is ultimately, but that's not where the passion is. The passion is creating those products and experiences.
So a craft brewery is a cool neighborhood collaborative space for making great products, right? And I say this to people a lot of times because they focus on the beer and producing a golden liquid that we all enjoy. But the reality is craft beer to me is a lot more than that. It's a lot more than making a great product. And as a craft brewer and as a craft brewery, we have to have a great product. If we don't, we're not going to last very long. So in the purest sense, craft brewing is really just us working hard to make a great product with all natural ingredients, no BS. But the reality is, my view of craft beer in general is it's a great way to collaborate with the neighborhood and bring people together and sit down and hopefully solve the world's problems over a good pint of beer.
I think one is the unique flavors that we're able to produce. The creativity that you see coming from craft breweries is starting to strike a chord with people. People want something different than the regular beer-flavored beer. I think it also has to do with our interaction with the community. For us, we're real people. You see us out and about in the community, and we interact with people as much as possible, whereas we're not just a faceless corporation that some people see the large breweries as. We create gathering places for those in the community to come and feel pride in their area and have a unique product.
Yeah, the craft breweries that we have now versus the breweries of the past, I think they're both beer, but I think they're both very different products. Today, in a modern craft brewery, they're releasing new beers every week. There's new flavor options, new ingredients available all of the time. You've got a pretty large palette to work with when it comes to coming up with new recipes and new ideas. And it's a premium product. Those older breweries, they were more focused on one style or one recipe. It kind of becomes a cliche or a trope in the movies, where you have this one recipe. This was Grandpa's recipe, and I don't know how realistic that is or was, but it was really you liked your Blatz or you liked your Schlitz or that one beer, and that's just what you drank. So as the industry has evolved and more styles and ingredients are available, you see all kinds of fruit beers and crazy IPAs and the pastry stouts now where there's 1,000 calories in a glass of beer and it's 12% alcohol. That was not even an idea back in those days.
I feel Milwaukee was very late to the craft beer scene. Not to set aside what Lakefront and Sprecher and Milwaukee Brewing Company have done, because they were groundbreaking breweries in the late 80s and 90s, establishing those breweries and bringing craft beer to Milwaukee. Milwaukee was known as the big beer capital of the world. And why was that? I mean, we have a great resource in Lake Michigan. The water of Lake Michigan is very consistent all year long, so they could produce mass quantities of beer with the same resource and it would be very consistent. And that's why Miller and Pabst and Schlitz and all those big guys and hundreds of other breweries that we may not even know of, were based here in Milwaukee. if you look at the rest of the cities that are kind of craft beer centric around the country, Portland, Maine, and Portland, Oregon, and California, San Diego, California, Denver, Colorado, and you look at their craft beer scene. We're very late to the game. I think part of that is because there's a very German undertone to this city, and that Germanic, rigid mentality doesn't like change. And when craft brewers come along and they start producing beers, you'll notice, some of the most popular beers made by the longtime craft breweries in this city, like Lakefront, River West Stein, a German Stein beer, is their biggest selling local beer, and there's a reason for that. As the newer craft breweries are starting to open, and we kind of went through a big boom about 6 years ago. About 6 years ago, we started this massive build. We went from 4 or 5 craft breweries in the city to 32 in the last 5 years. And as that happened, it's taken time for the customer base. The younger crowd certainly embraces it right away. They've been waiting for it for so long. But the older crowd, it's taken them some time to embrace IPAs and a little less traditional style beers.
Well, I've been brewing for about 25 years myself. Started as a home brewer. My business partner, Rod Otto, and I been brewing together for almost 20 years. The gentleman that taught Rod how to brew is helping us now, Jay Schultz. So it's kind of a great collection of people, especially, different styles, kind of the same style, but different, interpretations of those styles. But we have Rebellion, been open going on 3 years, and been brewing for just about 2 here. Why did I start brewing? It looked fun. I remember I went to fill one of my tanks. I had a tapper system, and I went, and the place I went, he was actually brewing beer there. Well, after about 15 beers and about $300 later, I walked home with a brewing kit, and one of the worst things you can say to your wife is, don't be mad, but, and that's kind of what started. I started doing it just like anybody else in my kitchen, in my basement. I actually built another garage later on, and then of course it led to this. It kind of fell in my lap type of thing, so mostly a hobby. I think this can't be forgotten or mistaken, but the fact that it's an individual type interpretation is almost like art, really. This is my style of a Bavarian Weiss. You can go down the road and some of the other places might have a little bit different style. Maybe it's more of a wheat style instead of a Bavarian style. So a lot of it has to do with the individual brewers and stuff, and I think that's just the way things are. It's just, hey, I'm going to make it like this, and I like it, and hopefully some of the people that come in feel the same way about it.
I was working, in a different field, more of a corporate type environment. I was a software developer, project manager, and picked up this hobby of home brewing. I think I was about 25 years old, so it was something I was always interested in, brewing my own beer, and that just kind of really took off as a hobby. I was brewing all the time at home. Started in the kitchen with extract kits and the stew pot and all of it, and took off for me. It was a cool intersection between art and science. Where you could play with different ingredients, but also there's a science to it. So for me, I really dug in. I was brewing almost every weekend. Built a kegerator, switched over from extract brewing to all grain brewing at one point, and really got interested in all forms of fermentation. So I started doing wines and ciders. And
yeah, the reason I got into brewing is I enjoyed creating flavors and learning more about the process. I was a science major in college, which was when I started brewing. So I liked learning about, the biology, chemistry, and that side of brewing. So it kind of not only was a creative outlet, but also tapped into my interest in science as well. And I was actually looking to go into the medical industry, and as soon as came time to look for a master's program, I was kind of burned out on school, so some friends suggested I pursue brewing because they enjoyed my homebrew. And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea.
Well,
So,
I got started in the brewing industry, much like many others, home brewing as a hobby. The original industry I was in, the printing industry, seemed to kind of be lagging and didn't have a real positive future in that. So I decided to look into taking my hobby to a professional level. So I went to the Siebel Institute of Technology in 2008, and at the time that was the first time that brewing school had a sold-out class, and now I hear there's a waiting list, I think, for a couple years. So I got in at the right time, and it was a very different beer scene when I got into the brewing industry. I believe at the time there was only 2,500 breweries in the United States, and now there's well over 7,000, possibly into 8,000 or so breweries. So it was, a lot of these styles we're seeing now weren't actually a thing then, so it's been really cool to see how they've evolved and developed, how the industry has developed.
I think my approach, although a lot of brewers would say this, I think my approach is to seek drinkability and balance. So I'm trying to keep my bitterness tempered and also produce unique flavor combinations that you're not seeing from a lot of breweries. Like, I like to use a lot of botanicals and flowers in my beers when possible, and we're also seeing a lot of people don't want kind of that beer flavored beer, but we produce those type of beers, but we also produce beers that taste almost nothing like beer. They taste like fruit juice, or they taste like, we do make a series of beers that taste like wine, like a sparkling version of wine.
Things that I take pride in and really strive for is, you know, a drinkability, a level of drinkability with our beers. You know, if you have one of our beers, and you know, everybody has different tastes, and they're going to like what they like and not like what they don't like. But you know, our goal is to have a beer that was good. I'd like a second one. You know, if you don't want a second one of our beers because it was bad, not necessarily because it was not what you're interested in, I think we failed in some ways. And you know, even some of the more aggressive IPAs, you know, I try to make those with a level of drinkability that, like, oh, it's a pleasant beer to have. There's not, you know, an astringent, bitter quality to it, or you know, some of our sweeter, thicker, higher ABV beers. You know, there's a lot of them out there that they're fantastic beers, but you really only want 4 or 5 ounces of it, and you're like, yeah, I'm good to go. You know, ours, we try to keep the sweetness level at least at a reasonable, you know, level. So, all right, yeah, I can drink 16 ounces of that. You know, yeah, maybe you're full afterwards, but at least you enjoyed the experience. You know, so I think, you know, just that pleasant drinkability, you know, and approachability is one of the things that sets us apart.
So what makes us different? We're in a pretty crowded market with craft breweries. There's a bunch of them. I can walk to 5 craft breweries in about 10 minutes from where we're sitting right now. So I have to, in order to attract people here on a day-to-day basis, I have to do something different. And what I feel we do different is hospitality. I focus my business model on being a hospitality brand and not just being a brewery. We have a broad array of offerings. I don't focus my taps on all IPAs or all lagers or all sour beers, or, you know, I don't have a real narrow focus. We have a very broad focus. And I feel that's the biggest thing that sets us apart, is that we're fully staffed all the time with hosts and servers and bartenders, and then we have a manager running around making sure everybody's taken care of. But then the broad array of offerings, you know, my wife typically does not drink beer. She's a wine drinker, and so and I'm not the only one. There's a bunch of people that love craft beer, like myself, but they have a spouse or significant other that doesn't, drink beer. So having that broad array of offerings really makes us attractive to people that are, maybe have somebody that doesn't drink beer, but also when they're planning out for a group outing and they don't necessarily know the preferences of everybody.
As far as where do I see it going, who would have thought seltzers, 10 years ago were going to be this giant, end of that. I can remember when we had flavored malt liquors was going to be the next big thing. Non-alcoholics like Zing and those types of things came out. I really think everything is cyclical, and I think that pendulum is swinging back to traditional beers. I see a lot of people starting to go back to regular lagers or everyday drinking beers and stuff, kind of drinking beers. And I think that's kind of where it is. I mean, where else are you going to go from something like that? What else are you going to make? Unless it goes to chocolate or more fruit stuff, we're going to eat it at, it's going to be frozen. Well, oh, wait a minute, they make slushies already. So I don't know. It's a guess, and I think we all adapt to it, and we'll all probably jump on the bandwagon and make whatever that new thing is, when it comes out.
Where I see the future of the industry going is, I would say that's the $1 million question. We're all trying to figure out what's going to be the next hot style, what are people looking for. But yeah, at this point, it's hard to say. We keep trying new things and seeing what's striking a chord with our customers, and I think that's the biggest approach to finding the next trend, is just trying new things.
So, evolution of the craft brewing industry. What I see happening truly, seltzers are making a big play in the market, especially craft seltzers made by local breweries, which is great. We've jumped on that too. We have a craft seltzer on tap. It's phenomenal. It sells super well for us. But I think what's happening is by making a seltzer, we're not displacing a craft beer drinker. We're taking a Bud Light drinker or a Miller Lite drinker, and we're getting them to drink a locally made craft product. If you look at the numbers industry-wide, craft beer continues to grow in market share, yet the macro breweries' market share continues to dwindle. That dwindling of their market share is not all of those people that are leaving macro beers are going to craft beer. Some of them are going to seltzers, they're going to hard seltzers, they're going to ciders, and they're going to more locally made product. I think that the whole movement in the entire food service industry with a focus on local is really helping craft breweries, because it's getting people in the mindset that, hey, you know what, maybe Anheuser-Busch, when they concoct this product that they call Bud Light, maybe that's not all genuine malt and hops and whatnot. Maybe they're using rice syrup and corn syrup and some stuff like that as fillers to make that product, which they do. And people are starting to realize that, and they realize that locally made products, the brewers don't do that. They stick to traditional methods. Yeah, we put some adjuncts in, like this beer has honey in it. Well, I know where honey comes from, and it's not from a factory, So when we add adjuncts to a beer, it's typically made to enhance the beer, enhance the product, not to be a cheap way to get fermentables to create the product less expensively.
Where do I see the brewing industry going in the next 5 years? I think that's what everybody's trying to figure out all the time. Yeah, the seltzer thing, that came out of nowhere, I think, honestly, for everyone. And craft brewers, I think, were immediately hesitant to do it, and there was, I think, even for a little while, kind of a stigma to it. And that's turned around, a complete 180 where, almost every craft brewery is doing seltzers now. Looking forward then, change is the only thing you can count on in the craft brewing industry. That 5 years ago, probably no one, was doing New England IPAs, other than breweries in New England. And then that took over and everybody's doing New England IPAs. And, I think the seltzers kind of become, an antithesis to that, because that style is, very flavor forward, very full on the palate, and, you just want, something crisp, I think just being flexible, both, in your attitude and outlook and what you're willing to do and what you're willing to accept as a new trend, and from a production standpoint, with your technology and your capabilities. If you're geared up to do one thing and the market shifts in a different direction, but you're still geared up for that one thing, you're in trouble. So I think just maintaining that flexibility and keeping an eye on trends is the only way to survive. And I think craft brewers are some of the most nimble business owners out there. Everybody thought craft beer was going to be dead 2 weeks into the pandemic, and I think the Brewers Association said 75% of breweries are going to close, and here we are a year later, and I don't really hear a lot of closings out there. There's been help, but brewers are pretty resourceful and pretty nimble, so I think as we go towards, whatever that is 5 years from now that everyone's into, we'll be there.
Yeah, just drink more beer. That's all I got to say. So everything is, great with a good beer.